Whatever?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's fine.
Whatever. Sorry, Dad.
I'm an old man. Bear with me. My name is David. I'm an addict. Oh, I'm gratefully clean today. Gratefully this meeting. Thank you so much for asking me, Roger. I was your fifth choice. I appreciate you. My clean date is November 3rd of 2001. I have 22 years clean, and I didn't try. I didn't try to do that. I'll talk a little bit about what happened, what it was like, and what it's like today. So this is from the 12th step of It Works How and Why. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Yet there are limits to what we can do to help another addict. We cannot force anyone to stop using. We cannot give someone the results of working the steps, nor can we grow for them. We cannot magically remove someone's loneliness or pain. Not only are we powerless over our own addiction, we are powerless over everyone else's. We can only carry the message. We cannot determine who will receive it. It is absolutely none of our business to decide who is ready to hear the message of recovery and who is not. Any addict, regardless of clean time, should be able to pour out his or her pain in an atmosphere free of judgment. Most of us found that we are able to feel great empathy for those who suffer from our disease precisely because it is our disease. Our empathy isn't abstract, nor is our understanding. Instead, it is born in shared experience. We greet each other with the recognition reserved for survivors of the same nearly fatal catastrophe. This shared experience, more than anything else, contributes to the atmosphere of unconditional love in our meetings. I'm going to share a little bit, and some of it's going to relate on why I read that shit. Again, my name is David. I'm an addict. I'm really grateful to be here. I'm not from here. I got clean in North Carolina. I stayed there a little over a decade and then moved. When I found Narcotics Anonymous, I was 18 years old. When I found drugs, I was about 16 years old, and I used for the first time because of a girl. That's going to be a theme that goes through like a thread in my share. Drugs made me feel different, made me feel cool, made me feel accepted. Had people that didn't want to be around me, and it didn't make me feel except for what the drugs did to me, right? I came from a family of, loving parents. We were well off. My dad was a doctor. My mom a school teacher. And they knew nothing about addiction. They knew nothing about how to help me or to guide me. They just tried to throw more church at me. They tried to talk me down, give me different kinds of punishments, and that just kind of pushed me away. I didn't know how to really accept any kind of love, and that was a theme. They were able to help me to use in a lot of ways. I had to figure out schemes to be able to use and to find things that I wanted to do with my well-offness. I was able to craft a scheme to get them to pay me to travel overseas for school. So I had these trips to Spain and Mexico and Portugal, because if you're tall enough to go to the bar, you're tall enough to drink. So that was the reason I went to these places, was to drink, to find more things, and to abuse more drugs. And this continued and continued. I somehow got through high school. I was a kind of a bare minimum kind of kid. I didn't pass the SATs well enough. I had to take them again, and then I got a 1,000, which is, guess what the cutoff was? 1,000 to be able to go to college. So I was like, fucking there, check that box. I was able to go to college, and I was So good at college, I was able to get kicked out before the drop ad period. That's where I hit my bottom, was where I went to college. I had been given like a kind of a nest egg of cash to be able to survive through college, and I found people right away, that wanted to just be misfits like I wanted to. I was traveling back and forth to my hometown to get coke and back to college and trying to just be this person that I thought I needed to be, and I thought that I had to continue. And there were glimpses during like really big binges that I had where it's like maybe I'm doing too much, And this is all, and I was a kid, So when I was on a binge, my coke dealer was like, oh, well, if you let me have your car for the night, I'll just leave you with all you can use, and I'll see you in the morning. And I really thought and considered doing that. It's like, no. Instead, I'll sell you my PlayStation, my most valuable possession at the time, right? So those were those glimpses where I'm like, well, I'm really glad I didn't fucking give him my car because I wouldn't have seen my car again, right? But those little glimpses and those little things weren't enough. The pain of using was not enough, right? When I got busted, it was just a morning in my dorm, kind of these plainclothes detectives with a dog, right? Busted down my dorm room and pulled me out in my PJs, and the dog was all up in there. Dog was sniffing around and, couldn't find anything really in the dorm room, but they knew there was something in there. And I wasn't about to fucking tell them. But they found some shit in my car, and that's how I got busted and kicked out of college. As soon as I got out, I drove back to spend every single dime, trade every single thing that I could, do everything I could to exhaust that feeling, and then I had to come to. I had to face reality. So I had to drive. I drove 3 hours back to college and then called my folks. They were in the same town, but I had to drive back and keep up the illusion so that they could try to save me. Like, oh, I'm a victim. This happened to me. It has nothing to do with me. So got pulled from college. And back home, and now I'll talk a little bit about my last run, because in a serious way, I like the book says, I didn't want to identify. I wanted to look at the differences, right? And coming to Narcotics Anonymous, I hear about all these different stories and all these tales and all these extensive things, and I couldn't really identify. But how I am now with decades clean is that my story is my story. If you can identify and take one thing away from my share tonight, that's great. And if you don't, keep coming back. So my last run, it's around Halloween, and so I'm there. I'm back in my hometown again, been kicked out of college, running with some old buddies. It's Halloween. My costume is a werewolf mask, end of sentence. And I'm going from party to party to kegger to do anything, just pick up everybody else's beers and do all that shit, until at the end of the night, where I started with friends, where I just end up passed out in my own filth, in my own mask, and no one I know is around. And I'm just cold, and I'm in a dark place, and I guess I have to go home now. The friends that I thought were friends, nowhere to be seen, and that was kind of almost the last time I used. But that feeling of like, this doesn't work. Like, I'm trying to do this and this doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? It used to work because I used to go to the same guy for the same bag week after week after week. And then that didn't work. And that fucking scared me because it couldn't have been me. It couldn't have been the dope. What happened? So I stopped using that specific thing and I went back to another drug. My last run, the night before I went into treatment, I went over, still in my hometown, went over to a girl's house. She said, don't drink my last beer in the fridge. Fine. Hung out with her. She didn't end up wanting to sleep with me. That fucking sucks. I drank her beer. And I consider, and that is truth, that is the last time I ever did anything, was a pathetic beer that was not mine. And that was my last run. How fucking fabulous is that? The next morning, I went to treatment. I went to the Wilmington Treatment Center. in North Carolina. And I was like sad I couldn't be with the youth because I was 18. Because the youth had it going on, you know. The younger people were cooler, the older people were not, right? I've changed my perspective on that now. In any case, I felt left out. I was not serious in treatment. They had AA meetings there in treatment. I hid in my closet. They looked for me, and I didn't want to hear fucking Santa Claus talk about alcohol. I wanted to stay in the closet. So I felt like I was just bouncing around different things. I was jealous of the dude that got burned on his back from a heating pad and had to go to the hospital. He got to leave. I was jealous of that guy. I was jealous of the people that got kicked out because one dude got a hand job in the bus on the way to a meeting and I didn't. You know, I felt so kind of, you know, diffused with all these different thoughts and feelings, and I wasn't like a whole person. I just knew that I didn't want to be myself. And in going to groups and going and participating, almost through the 28 days, my counselor had to pull me aside and he said, David, we know that in high school you were like this actor guy, and I'm a drama kid, you know, I'm dramatic. But he said, we knew you did drama in high school, so if you don't start getting serious in meetings and really start to share what's going on with you, we're not going to kind of sign your paper, we're not going to help you get out of trouble. And that was the wake-up call. Because having those charges, getting kicked out of college, I needed to get rid of that. Because I wanted to go back to use. I wanted to continue to try all these different things that could help me feel different. And so I was like, okay, I'll start sharing. I went to the group. I shared about how in Mexico, I just stayed drunk, but I was there. And I went to this really fancy, amazing club in Acapulco, and the nephew of the governor, and I speak a little Spanish, you know. I was able to maneuver and get things I shouldn't have been able to get. But anyway, the governor's nephew asked me to his VIP table, and I was able to hang out with that guy, and I was like, this is really cool, until that was the time when I was on alcohol and got molested, you know. And I shared that at the meeting. People were crying, people were like touched by what I shared, people gave me a hug, and I still didn't understand why, but I'm like, oh, you need me to share some shit? I'll share some shit I don't like about what happened to me. And then it worked. I was able to qualify to continue with treatment, right? And today, you know, working the steps, having a relationship and an intimate relationship with a sponsor, and I talk about alcohol with him. Oh, I didn't have a problem with alcohol, but it's like all these different things in my life. Alcohol was there. It's like, yeah, you might have a fucking problem with alcohol too. So I was able to finish treatment. I was able to successfully return to my hometown, and the charges were still pending. I still had to resolve that. I still had to get out of trouble. So I was going to meetings. I got a sponsor like right away. I was trying to stay clean. Just a day or so after I got out of treatment, I was in the backyard with my dog, and my phone fell out of my pocket. I was trying to call it from inside the house, and my dog found it in the yard and chewed it to shit. All of those numbers that I used to have, of all those old connections, all those frenemies, was in the belly of my dog, right? So I had to get all these new numbers from all these new people in Narcotics Anonymous. It was a blessing. It was such a great thing that happened. Because I had the temptation, but when I had showed up to one of my old haunts, they were like, who gives a shit? We got clean too. We stopped we stopped doing that. And I'm like, oh, I'm not important to them either. I guess I'll continue to go to Narcotics Anonymous and try to understand my feelings. Still coming up on the court date, I had my sponsor write me a letter of recommendation. It's like, David's going to meetings, David's working steps, David's got a sponsor. I was like, yeah, this looks fucking good. I'm going to get out of trouble. I get to sit with the DA, and they go over my charges, and he gives me the story about he had a sister, heroin addict, and she overdosed, and he's going through this story, and I'm thinking, oh, well, this is going to be me. He's going to throw the book. He's going to give me something. And he said, David, you're doing what you need to be doing. You know, looked at my letter and all this shit. He's like, I'm going to give you a break. I'm going to dismiss all the charges. So I didn't have any consequences from that time, and I had freedom kind of for that first time to kind of make a decision. I was already in Narcotics Anonymous. people wanted me to come around. They wanted to see me at another meeting. They wanted to hang out with me. There was one asshole that kept on talking to me after the meeting because I wouldn't leave. And I didn't know it was the meeting after the meeting. And he just kept talking at me. And I'm like, okay. So I kept going to meetings, and I didn't try to use each day for that day. And it was okay. There was a time that I had the opportunity and not the desire. So I used to be told, right, and I don't hear it a lot here, but if I'm working a program, I might have the desire to use and I might have the opportunity, but working a program, having a connection to God, those things don't connect. I don't have the desire and the opportunity at the same time. Because if I do, I probably use. So going through all my shit for my dorm, I found the stuff the dog found was trying to smell. It was an old fucking Doritos bag. There's a whole bag of some shit. And nobody found it because it looked like trash. I was so fucking smart. So I go and show my dad. He's like, what the fuck? Oh, get out of my face with that. Okay, whatever. And I'm looking at it over the toilet bowl, and I smell it, and then I dump it into the toilet, and I flush it. I don't know if there was like a spiritual awakening at that time. I don't know if there was a pull, but I had this opportunity. I had it in my fucking hand. And they say where I got clean in the South, they said if you don't put it in your hand, it won't get in your body. Something happened, and I was able to flush it. I was able just to have a little bit of a suggestion in my head what I should do in that situation, and I did it. I'm really, really grateful for those early days, for that message being so clear that I have choices that I didn't use. I continued to do service when I got here. I thought I was really important and prestigious, and I was given jobs because you guys trusted me. No, I just had time. Can you chair this meeting? Sure. Can you make this coffee? Yes. And I got kind of so passionate about service in my hometown. We had 2 meetings a day except for Sunday. And I was like, sponsor, I want to make another group so that we can have 2 meetings every day of the week. And he's like, groups are only started out of resentments. Are you sure? I'm like, well, yeah. I guess I'll do it the right way. Anyway. So started this group, and it did okay for a couple of years. I did area level service. I was on the steering committee of a convention. I went all the way to regional service. And service is important in my recovery today. I still do area level service. I still do local level service. I do sponsorship. Service is the easiest way that I can give back to that still suffering addict. That's like kind of formal. It kind of fits everybody if you wanted to do some kind of service. I think I got a little too big for my britches with service, is that I started to put service in front of my recovery. I had a relationship with sponsors. I worked through the steps. And about at step 10, I stopped. I stopped focusing on the steps and using that, incorporating that in my life. And I got sicker. Now, I was doing regional level service. I was sponsoring guys. And I had gotten a new girlfriend, so that was perfect. It was all this kind of perfect concoction for me to focus on all those things and for self-will to grow and for me to focus on other things that are not my spiritual process, are not my communication and relationship with God. And that was where I was able to get sicker and sicker and sicker. To sum up, right, I don't know what it was like to go through COVID in Narcotics Anonymous because I was staying clean and living dirty. I was abstinent. I don't know what it was like. During that time, one of these guys that I had used with in high school came back, or didn't come back, but found Narcotics Anonymous, right? And it was so cool to see that guy, and I had time, and I was able to talk to him about this program, and I was excited for his recovery, and he stumbled a little bit. And I still tried to help him, and I tried to reach out. I knew his sister, I knew his mom. He didn't make it. They found him dead at his computer listening to music, and he had OD'd. At his funeral, during this kind of downward slope of focusing on all these other things, but not the aspects of the steps, not the spiritual process. At his funeral, they started to talk. They did his playlist that was going when they found him dead. And I fucking lost it. I walked out. I felt so much shame for doing that. But because I had disconnected from people, because I wasn't going to meetings regularly, I was just able to put that shame in a backpack and carry it the fuck around. And I felt miserable. I felt like I had let him down. And that shame continued to pivot me away from the rooms. Now, I was gifted, right, with some of these opportunities to kind of grow professionally. During that time also, instead of meetings and steps, I was able to concentrate on graduate school. I went and got a master's in social work while having 2 other jobs. I got a 3rd job at the college, and I was doing it. I was doing something. It wasn't recovery oriented, but I told myself it was. Because obviously in social work, being Narcotics Anonymous for a decade, I know much more than these kids do, right? So I was able to have this kind of placeholders in my recovery process that was not recovery, and it kept me sick. And it kept me coasting on self-will, which only gets me so far. I graduated with a master's in social work, and I was able to secure a job in Portland, Oregon, before I graduated, because my partner at the time, she wanted to get out of Greenville. I wanted to get out of Greenville too, fuck. And so that was my ticket. So this relationship, I haven't talked about it yet, but I won't go into it too much because I'm working on the resentment. The relationship that I had was not a good relationship. It was convenient because I needed financial support. And I was able to concentrate on those things. I guess concentrate on the pain from a relationship to kind of put me more into work, more into making money, than my recovery there too. So springboarding to Portland, Oregon, still on self-will, still not connected, still miserable. I got here and I went to a couple of meetings, and then I was like, I can't go to meetings. I'm a therapist. I'm going to have clients that are going to meetings too. I can't have that conflict. So I just stopped. And I'd like to say that, there was a reason for me not to go, but I moved here in the summer, and the first meeting I went to, a guy that I don't know who he is now because I've been here for 8 years, but he invited me to his 4th of July cookout after meeting me one fucking time because I was new to town. That was Narcotics Anonymous. That's unconditional love. I didn't go. I reviewed it with my partner. She's like, oh no, I can't go with those people. So I was like, okay. Because she was my higher power. I continued to let that happen. So I worked. I slaved at this agency. I got a second job. Why not? Right? I'm not going to meetings. I can't afford to live here. I'll get a second job. And I just continued to be miserable. So miserable where I became a person I didn't recognize, where it continued to entertain from the disgruntled feelings that I had from my partner that I needed to look outside my relationship. That I did not see myself as a cheater or somebody who would have affairs. I did not see myself as that person. But the disease of addiction is so insidious, right, that it will allow me to go through that pain. It wants me to be miserable. And if it doesn't have me use, it will have all these other things fall apart around me so that I continue to think about using, right, as a good idea. So yeah, I had these affairs. I still stayed. I would fly back to North Carolina and talk to my network about it. Like, why don't you leave her? It's like, I don't know. So I continued until I had this financial idea that I could move out. And I told myself it was financial, and until that time I didn't move. And then I finally did. It was a relief, but I still had no foundation. I came back to meetings at that time. I had a 5-year dry drunk, and it was completely miserable. I was such an idiot for stopping meetings, for not coming back, for not thinking I could share my story with people that really are the best people to understand my story. So doing that, coming back, all my problems were solved. No, it wasn't. It wasn't that easy. It wasn't that easy. I had to restart the steps. I had to do that again. I never finished. I used to be this guy in the meetings that talked about the steps and had Gucci shit to fucking share, and then I hadn't finished the steps. I had stopped short on looking at myself on a daily basis. Step 10. I couldn't do that because I would know I was sick and I knew I needed to change. These past 2 years, I was able to go through the steps And it has been a life-changing experience. I had a spiritual awakening as a result. It helped me to recover to a point where I could really emotionally support my mom. And I thought I had all these resentments against the institutions of church, against these locations, against these people that said things to me when I was a kid. And it was none of those things. It was actually specifically one person. And now I get this opportunity to try to champion my mom, to be there for her. And I was able to share with her when her mom died, my grandmother died almost 2 years ago. And being able to share with her about how I'm praying for my grandma is a gift of this program that's not in here, right? Sharing with her that I don't share for this procedure to work. I share for my grandma to not be in pain. And how I got to that point, Mom, is this and this. Now, she doesn't have to get it because I'm carrying a message to my mom. This is how I survived this tragedy myself. And it worked for me, and then I let it go. I can't control what she does. Today, I have a working relationship with my mother, and it is a good relationship that I continue to pile work on myself to work on, because I know what the proof is that I'm going to be able to be a son, that I don't have to lie to her about how much money I need after I've taken all the money out of her purse. I can actually show up and be a participant in her life in the way that I should, in the way that God sees for me to do. So, the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous are available for anybody, and it teaches me those things along the way about how to be ready, about humility, about forgiveness, and ultimately to continue to turn over those little things I learned in the third step to impact my life on a greater effect than I could even imagine. So with the 11th step, the 10th step, 11th step, I on a daily basis can turn to those different things about my desires, my wants and needs, and I can continue to turn to surrender on those things because I have this contact with God. And I didn't show up. I show up wanting to fit in and to be fucking cool. And I've yet to be successful. I will continue to try to do that. But in the 12 steps, it's going to be okay. Will I get a job? Will I get a girl? Will I get a house? Those are things that I can leave to God. I can leave those things over to God. I can turn those things over. Because no matter what happens, and gosh, it pains me to almost say it, but it's lessons and blessings is what they used to say to me. That whatever should be happening, right? Whatever will be happening is going to be God's will, right? It's going to be how much I fight against it, right? How much am I the director trying to move those different pieces around, right? And that's where I get pain, right? It's not from loss of job, loss of life, all these different things that happen on a daily basis sometimes. It's how I can't accept them. It's how I have fear about those things happening to me because I'm not in control. If I have a pattern of behavior that I try to practice on a daily, and I can continue to turn it over, my life will be fucking peaches and cream, And that's what I really want today. The message I wanted to close with is that this is available. I know personally for myself how much of an asshole I am to me for not doing the work, for not just starting, for not knowing if my sponsor is dead, for giving up on a time where I could have had some growth, right? I'm an asshole to myself for not trying to go through emotional growth and trying to learn a lesson. And I know what the risk is because I became a person that probably the next thing was using. And I did all these other things to myself that weren't using, and I know how I feel today. So I stay plugged in, I go to meetings, I have a home group. I am obsessed with this literature. My book is in fucking pieces, right? Okay? Because this is how important this is to me now. And I am just grateful to God that I haven't had a chance. That I didn't make that choice when I had the opportunity to destroy myself again. I love everybody in here. This program saved my life. It'll continue to save my life as long as I show up I'm humbled to be asked to speak. Thank you so much. My name is David. Thanks for letting me share.